Hello, everybody. A very, very warm welcome. And we are just going to quickly start with our solutions. So I hope you're ready with your answers by your side. And let me quickly introduce myself. I'm Sunita. I'm the lead course architect at GMAT Quiz. And with tons of teaching experience, I hope to bring simple solutions, simple explanations for my students. All right, so let's get started with the first question. So this was the first question that you solved. And from what I have, most of you got this right. Most of you opted for uh, C. Now let's see how that is correct. All right. So let me get on with the um, solution. Now, one of the things that you can do best for yourself to improve your accuracy and your efficiency is read properly. Okay. For example, here we can see that it's a conversation between the candidate for governor and the incumbent governor. Incumbent governor is usually the governor who's going out. All right. So, what is the candidate for governor saying? The outgoing governor and his administration have, made a mess of our tax laws. So, this is one of the points that the candidate for governor is making. And then the candidate for governor is saying that although they have offered necessary tax cuts to small businesses. Okay, so acknowledgement done that there is a certain amount of tax cuts given to small businesses. They have so complicated and increased personal income taxes that it is almost better financially to be unemployed than to own a business. So basically, the candidate for governor is maligning the outgoing governor, saying that the outgoing governor made a mess of the state's tax laws. All right, so this is what we have for the candidate saying. Now let's see what the incumbent governor is saying. On the contrary, okay, so the incumbent does not agree with the candidate's conclusion. Let's see. The changes to the tax code my administration I have made have undoubtedly brought new business to our state, thereby increasing overall prosperity. In fact, last year alone, three major new manufacturing plants began operations. So the incumbent's conclusion is my laws have brought new business, prosperity has increased. Now, even without looking at the question stem, which is asking you to identify the flaw in the response, all right, you can see clearly that it's a case of looking London, going Tokyo. The candidate is saying the tax burden has increased, the laws are a mess. Incumbent is saying, I've brought new business, I've increased prosperity through those laws. But the incumbent isn't really addressing the issue about complicating the tax laws and increased tax burden. All right. He doesn't reply to that accusation made by the candidate's conclusion. All right. So that's the flaw. And when we are looking into the answer choice, we are going to look for this. Let's go through the options. So the incumbent governor's response to the candidate's criticism is flawed because it here stands for the response, assumes that new manufacturing plants will contribute significantly to revenues. Now, this is not an assumption. This is outrightly stated here. Okay, look at this. The incumbent has already stated this. So this is not an assumption, and therefore this is out. That's not the flaw. Does not assign a dollar amount. That means does not um, quantify uh, the relationship between tax incentives and attraction of new businesses. Well, that is also not the flaw because the incumbent is just stating that yes, new business will be attracted. Fails to address the candidate's concern about the tax burden. Yes, exactly. This is what we have understood through our pre-thinking. So this is what we are going to hold on to. Denies the candidate's accusation without providing evidence for an alternative conclusion. The incumbent actually provides evidence for another conclusion, right? This is the evidence that the incumbent provides for drawing the conclusion that the tax laws are good for the business and the overall prosperity. So this is also not the flaw. Perpetuates means supports or continues with the unfounded assumption that state will prosper. Again, state will prosper is supported by this, is is supported by the assumption, and therefore this is also not the flaw. So the correct answer was C, and most of you got this right. In fact, almost all of you got this right. Correct? With that, let's go to the second question. All right, let me quickly go to the second question. Here it comes. So, question two, again, let's quickly look at the stimulus. Plant saplings in greenhouses usually take 40 days to grow into plants that can produce flowers. Okay, so this is the usual time, 40 days, it can become a flower bearing plant. However, so that's a contrast there. When the greenhouse is smeared with oil, that means if you're applying oil to the greenhouse, the saplings grow into flower bearing plants within 30 days, even though the intensity of light entering the greenhouse is reduced by 30%. I mean, so after smearing oil, the time taken to become a flower bearing plant is reduced, which is quite contrary to one's expectations, because usually the intensity of light entering the greenhouse is supposed to help the plants grow. And we've got to explain the contrast described here, right? So the paradox, if we need to pinpoint the paradox, is why more time is taken when intensity of light is higher than taken when intensity of light is lower. I mean, when the intensity of light is lower, you expect the plants to take more time, right? So something about the intensity of light must be inhibiting or hindering or stopping the growth or slowing down the growth of the plants, slowing down, and therefore, it's taking longer when more light is there, when more intensity is there, and less time when less intensity is there. So we are looking for something along these lines. Let's go to the answer choices. Now, most of you again got this right. You marked D as the correct answer. Let's quickly see why the others are wrong. While visible light enables essential processes required for nutrition absorption, ultraviolet light hinders some essential growth processes. The point is, the passage does not differentiate between visible light and ultraviolet light, right? So this cannot be used to explain the contrast, explain the paradox. Let's go to B. Reducing the intensity of light entering the greenhouse by only 15% results in saplings to grow into flower bearing plants within 45 days. This actually says it's going to take longer. Reducing the intensity is going to increase the time taken for these plants to, um, if you just reduce it by 15%, then it will take longer. So this is also not explaining our paradox. So both A, B are out. Oil smear has a high chance of seeping inside the greenhouse through soil. Well, what it will do after seeping into the soil is not given to us. Will it enhance the growth of the plants? Will it slow down the growth of the plants? Not given to us. So we can't utilize this as an explanation. D says the green wavelength in visible light, the spectrum of light known as species, has a hard time passing through an oiled transparent barrier. Okay, so if you are oiling the greenhouse, then the light, the spectrum of light which is reducing the nutrition absorption gets reduced. That means the plants are now able to absorb nutrients better, and that could explain why they are growing faster just in 30 days, right? So D is our answer. Most of you got this right. Greenhouses that aren't smeared with oil allow light to pass through them with little loss in intensity. This we kind of already can infer from the passage, so this is out. So that's our question 2. Now, these two questions, none of you really marked anything else. Let's move to question 3. Here, most of you marked D. However, some of you also marked B. So let's see what is the correct answer here. Because people are generally better at detecting mistakes in others' work than in their own. Okay, what this means is, own work, people cannot detect mistakes. Others' work, people can detect mistakes. This is what the first sentence says. So based on this, what is the author saying? A prudent principle is that one should always have one's own work checked by someone else. So the conclusion drawn is get own work checked by others to detect the mistakes that you have made. What is the question stem asking us to do? Which one of the following provides best illustration of the principle above? So we want a parallel structure that mirrors this reasoning. Your own work, you don't check because you will miss errors. Your own work, get it checked by others, they'll be able to detect mistakes. So we want something similar to that. And as I said, some of you mark D, some of you mark B. Let's see. A says, the best elementary school math teachers are not those for whom math was easy. So this is talking about easy, difficult. Teachers who had struggled through math themselves are better able to explain maths to students. So we are talking about struggle, we are talking about easy, difficult, hard explanation. This seems to say that if you are struggling with something, you are going to become better at that. I believe it goes kind of in the opposite direction to what we are trying to prove. So A is not the answer. Let's look at B. One must make a special effort to clearly explains one's view. Now here the person who the same person is explaining his or her own view to someone else. People normally find it easier to understand their own views. So this is kind of again going the opposite direction. I mean, the passage was about somebody else can spot mistakes in my work. Like, so somebody else in my work. This is talking about me and my own view. I can explain it better to the other. So this is not the answer. So we can kind of rule out A, we can rule out B. Let's look at C. Juries composed of legal novices. Novices means we're talking about people who don't have experience. Rather than panels of lawyers, should be final arbiters in legal proceedings. People who are not legal experts are in a better position to detect good legal arguments. The point here is we are bringing in the angle of experience, not experience, novices. And this is something totally new and something not at all mirroring the structure mentioned in the passage. Correct answer is D, which most of you did mark. People should always have their writing proofread by someone else. So someone else should proofread your writing. Someone who does not know in advance what is meant to be said is in a better position to spot errors. So get your work proofread by somebody else. That way, the person is going to be better able to detect errors. This is definitely mirroring our structure, what we are looking for. Let's look at the last one. Two people going out for dinner, okay, will have more enjoyable meal if they order for each other. Ordering for each other is not own work and somebody else's work, right? By allowing somebody else to choose, one opens oneself up to new and exciting dining experience. Seems like this is going to be better in the sense of, and no errors involved. So E is definitely not a mirror of the structure that we are looking for. D is the correct answer. I hope so far you don't have any queries. I can't really see any queries. All right. Hmm. Okay, cool. Let's move to the next question. Now, boldface, I want you to, at GMAT Wiz, we follow a particular technique for boldface questions, and I'm going to show you a little bit of that technique, The question stem is always going to ask you the role of the boldface, but can you really detect the role of the boldface without identifying the role of the other sentences? You cannot, right? Primarily, therefore, when you start reading the sentences, it is best to identify the sentences as either a fact or an opinion. If it's a fact, it can play the role of a premise or a counter premise, depending on the main conclusion. If it's an opinion, it could be the third party opinion, it could be the author's opinion. If it is the third party opinion, it could go in favor of the main conclusion or against it. If it is the author's opinion, it could be the main conclusion or it could be an intermediate conclusion supporting or going against the main conclusion. So that is mostly it. Here's the process. So you read the first sentence. People who drink coffee regularly say that they are addicted to caffeine because they feel they can't live without it. So this is a third party opinion. We're talking about what people feel. The author is talking about people feel that they are addicted to coffee. So right now we don't know what is the role played by this sentence. All we know is it is representing a third party opinion. Let's move to the next statement. Addiction is defined. Now this boldface is purely defining addiction. Okay, so this is just a fact, a definition of an addiction, and it tells us that it's a state in which a person depends on a drug with severe withdrawal symptoms, and he should have an urge to consume it more and more. So what are the things that qualify something as addiction? That definition is given here. Let's move next. Based on this definition, caffeine consumption does not qualify as an addiction. Now clearly this is the author's opinion, and the author is using this definition to support his opinion. And also note that author is going against the third party opinion. Okay, let's look at the next sentence. Researchers too have shown that caffeine does not cause any kind of addiction. So the author is using a fact to support his own opinion. So this is again supporting the author's opinion here. This and this are both supporting the author's opinion. The second boldface says alcohol or other drug addiction can have severe social and physical consequences, but this is not the case with caffeine. So clearly here, this is also the author's opinion saying that other things are addictive, but caffeine is not. So this is also going towards supporting the author's opinion. All right. And then finally, we have a continuation of statement 5, which says, this is not the case with caffeine, which further strengthens the belief that caffeine is not addictive or does not cause addiction. So the last portion is also a reasoning used by the author to support his or her own conclusion. So all through it, what have we done? We have differentiated the different sentences into facts and opinions. And through all of this, now you have to decide what is the main conclusion. The main conclusion clearly is caffeine is not addictive. So now we have to see how the bold faces are related to this main conclusion. The first bold face is basically the basis of the main conclusion. So it's a premise. And the first sentence is a counter premise because it is something that the author is going against. Similarly, the fourth statement is a premise because it is supporting the author's main conclusion. Fifth statement, which is the bold face, it is an intermediate conclusion acting as a premise. And finally, the last sentence is also a premise because it is supporting the author's conclusion. So our first bold face and our second bold face both are supporting the author's main conclusion. And this is what we are going to look out for. Now, on this question, most of you marked A as the correct answer. Some of you marked B and C as well. So let's see what the correct answer is. But take a screenshot of this because this is the best way to solve a boldface question. Let's go through the options. Once again, just to remind, this part is also a premise. This is also a premise. And the main conclusion is this sentence here. This is the main conclusion. So we'll look for an option which is defining this relationship. The first provides the definition of a term. Okay, is the first boldface a definition? Yes, it is a definition of addiction. So this is correct. That has been used to arrive at a conclusion. Yes, the author is using this to arrive at his conclusion. So this part is also correct. Now notice how I am breaking the boldface options and reading. The second provides further support. Since the second one is a premise, it can be called providing further support for that conclusion. Which conclusion? This conclusion. So A clearly is the correct answer. Let's quickly rule out the other choices as well. The first provides the definition of a term. This is correct. Second provides further support for that definition. No. This is not supporting the definition as such. So this is out. First provides a definition. Yes. That constitutes the main premise of the argument. We can call it the main premise. Second is the conclusion of the argument as the whole. No, the second one is also a premise. So C is out. First and second are contradictory claims. No, the first and second are both acting as premise, so they are not going against each other, and I can rule out D right here. Okay. um, E says the first provides evidence in support of the conclusion of the argument. um, so the first is an evidence in support of the conclusion of the argument. Yes, it is evidence. Yes, it is the supporting the main conclusion of the argument. Second provides further justification for this evidence. Now, the second boldface is not justifying the first boldface. Okay. So, E is also out. Correct answer on this is A. I hope you enjoyed this process, guys. Do let me know. Did you find this process enjoyable? Yes? Do let me know if you are finding this process enjoyable. In fact, just to quickly mention a few things, that I'm going to post 2 links here for all of you, just in case you want to get in touch with us and look at the free trial version of our course. And let me get on with the next. Any questions, guys? Do you have any questions? Yes? Any questions? Anything that you want to ask? Okay, great. Let me move to the next. So question 5. Now, less than 10% of world's people, or on this question again, most of you marked D. So let's see whether D is the correct answer or not. Less than 10% of the world's people and of the participants in combat sports worldwide are left-handed. So basically, we are being given 2 facts. Very small percentage of people in the world are left-handed, and very small percentage of combat sports participants are left-handed. So it's a very tiny proportion of the total number of people. Small percentage is left-handed. Total combat sports participants, a very small percentage is left-handed. However, so clearly there's a contrast here. There's a paradox that is going to be offered. A majority of top-level competitors in combat sports worldwide are left-handed. So what's the paradox here? The paradox is, if the total number of participants in combat sports are left-handed, then how come the percentage of high-level left-handed competitors is so high in combat sports? I mean, we would expect that also to be very low, right? So clearly, there is something about being left-handed which is giving the left-handed combat participants an edge over the others, maybe the right-handed people, because of which they are landing up among, top-level competitors. So let's move to the answer choice explanation. Left-handedness is more common in primitive cultures. Now, since this paragraph here is talking about the world population worldwide across the world, this won't really cut the cake. So this is out. Among top level competitors in many non-combat sports, we aren't concerned about this. In many cultures, children are discouraged from performing tasks with their left hands. Now, this is probably telling us why the percentage of people worldwide who are left-handed is very low, but this is doing nothing to explain the discrepancy. So this is out. D says, because left-handedness is so rare, this we already know, less than 10%. Opponents of left-handed fighters, that means we would have the right-handed fighters, they are ill-equipped to handle the position and angles from which those fighters attack. That means when we have a fight between the left-handed fighters and the right-handed fighters, the left-handed fighters have an edge, and therefore they might be the ones who are landing up to be top-level competitors. So D definitely cuts the cake here, makes for a good explanation. A significant number of left-handed competitors in combat sports have trained under coaches who have forced them to fight from right-handed positions. Now, this is actually making your paradox even more confusing. All right, so this is definitely out. Is the correct answer. Question 6, once again, boldface. Now, on question 6, I had a lot of, there were a lot of dissensions. Some of you marked E, many of you marked E, some of you marked A, some of you marked D. So clearly, we need to see why so many of you disagreed on this answer. So let me quickly go through this for you. Geneticist. So the geneticist here is the author. And geneticist is saying something about the ethicists. Ethicists are people who believe in ethics, have fears, many of them reasonable, about the prospect of cloning human beings, that is producing exact genetic duplicates. So this sentence here is basically an observation made by the author, and the observation made by the geneticist is a fact. And through this fact, we know that ethicists, they are they have a fear regarding cloning. They believe that there will be genetic duplicates through cloning, and that would be bad. Okay. But the horror movie image of a wealthy person creating an army of exact duplicates is completely unrealistic. Who is saying this? Author. The author's opinion, and the author is basically saying that the fears exhibited by the ethicists are unrealistic. So clearly, uh, this is the author disagreeing with the ethicists. Clones must be raised and educated, a long term process that could never produce adults identical to the original in terms of outlook, personality, or goals. So clearly, here, the author is providing reasoning to support his own opinion that the fears are unrealistic. The author is saying you can actually not, you know, turn somebody into an identical in terms of lots of characteristics that define a person. More realistic is the possibility. So the author is kind of supporting this sentence about what is unrealistic by basically stating what is an alternative use of cloning. The author is saying perhaps wealthy people might be using cloning um, to save, some alive organ banks. Maybe they can use the clones later on if they need to replace any of their organs. And this is not about creating genetic duplicates. So this is also going on to support the idea that the fears are unrealistic. So if you look at the main conclusion, the main point the author wants to make here is all these fears about cloning are completely unrealistic. And the first sentence is obviously counter premise because it is going against the main conclusion. The next two statements are conclusions made by the author, but both supporting the main conclusion. So literally speaking, the boldface that we have here is it's an intermediate conclusion acting as a premise for the main conclusion. Let's go to the options and see what is correct, because here A, D, and E were all running candidates. Okay, let's see. It is a reason for, so this is basically the premise, okay, and this premise is basically ruling out the fear here, which is the main conclusion. So let's see. It is a reason for dismissing various fears. No, it is not dismissing various fears. There is only one fear that has been raised, and that is the fear of creating exact duplicates, right? Um, so this is not dismissing various fears. A is out. There's just one fear that it is addressing. Okay. One fear that is raised is producing, this is the fear. Okay. And this is the fear that is being boldface. So it's not various fears. successfully. No, the boldface is not saying that genetic clones will not be produced. Genetic clones. We can just say that we cannot create somebody who has the same outlook, personality, or goals. So this is also out. It illustrates the claim that only wealthy people would be able to have genetic duplicates. No, this is absolutely crap. It is evidence for the claim. So it is evidence, yes, we can call it evidence since it is a premise for the claim. Which claim? Wealthy people might use genetic duplicates of themselves as source of compatible organs. No. So this is not supporting this part. Okay. Therefore, this is also out. It is a reason. Since it's a premise, we can call it a reason. For discounting means for cancelling out, for opposing. Okay, it is kind of opposing this fear here. One possible fear concerning cloning of human beings. Yes, definitely. Correct answer is E. All right, not A, not B. Question 7 is again a flaw question, and again here a lot of you had disagreements. Some of you thought it was C, some of you thought it was A, some of you thought it was D. Let's look at what is the correct answer. Now, here we are told, so there is a magazine article. And what is a magazine article saying? Let's identify that. Let's read it. The Environmental Commissioner's new proposals are called Fresh Thinking on Environment, and a nationwide debate on them has been announced. So there are some new proposals made by the Environmental Commissioner, and there's a debate on this. Well, fresh thinking from such an unlikely source as the Commissioner. So the Commissioner is considered as unlikely source. The magazine is, it is the opinion of the magazine here that the commissioner is an unlikely source to bring about fresh thinking, does deserve closer inspection. Okay, unfortunately, we discovered that these proposals, which proposals, the ones made by the commissioner, are identical to those issued 3 months ago by SARC Incorporation under the heading New Environmentalism. So what is given to us, magazine article is telling us that there are two proposals that are identical, one coming from the commissioner, an unlikely source, and one from his friend, which I'm going to read next. SARC's Incorporation's chief is a close friend of the commissioner. Since SARC Incorporation's polluting, so this is a polluting company, has marked it as an environmental nightmare. In our opinion, the nationwide debate can end here. So the magazine really believes that because the two proposals are identical, one is coming from unlikely source, one coming from his friend, and the friend is head of a polluting source, therefore the debate makes no sense. We have to identify the flaw. All right. Now, the reasoning offered here is if the proposal offered by a polluting source, if a polluting source is offering a proposal on new environmentalism, then that proposal is useless. And if a similar proposal is offered by another source close to the first, then that proposal is also useless. So basically, if a polluting source is offering a proposal, it's bad. And if a person close to the polluting source is offering a similar proposal, that is also useless. And nothing here in the magazine's article actually discusses the contents of the proposal. Just the debate is declared non-existent without telling us anything about the contents of the proposal. So that's the flaw according to me. Let's see which option points out this flaw. The magazine article's reasoning, the flaw in the reasoning is that it assumes without any justification, okay, that since two texts are similar, one of them must be influenced. So now, to say that there is no justification given is wrong. because they are justifying that sarc is a polluting source. It's an environmental nightmare, and that is justification given why the debate must be ended, right? Okay, so we can't say that there's no justification given. That's not the flaw. Out. The reasoning is flawed because it gives a distorted version of the commissioner's proposal. There is no version provided of the proposal anyways, so that's out. Dismisses the proposals, yes, it is dismissing the proposal because of their source, yes, that is also true, rather than because of their substance, yes, this is also true. So C is the correct answer. Uses emotive language, can't see emotive language anywhere. Appeals to the authority of sarc's chief, no, no appeal has been made, so C is the correct answer. I hope so far all clear, guys. Okay, let's go ahead and look at the next three questions now. Yes, guys. Okay, great. I'll just begin the explanation again. All right. So I'll just quickly explain this once more. Let me just clear all of this. Now, this particular question, there was a lot of confusion. Some of you marked A, some of you marked B, some of you marked E. What is given to us in this particular question, okay? We have a popular childcare facility in a county, HSD, and it claims that it's got the lowest child to child caregiver ratio. That means for every 5 child, they have one caregiver. And this does not include the cleaning staff and the cleaners. And HSD says 5.1 average is the lowest in the county. Okay. HSD also says that for the ages 1 to 3, it has the lowest child to caregiver ratio, which is 5:1. Now, the author tells us that the claim made by HSD is, if the author is saying the claim is not accurate, it means that although HSD is stating that 5:1 ratio is the lowest, specifically for ages 1 to 3, that is not correct, which essentially means that some other daycare in the county must be having a lower than 5:1 ratio for the ages 1 to 3. So if we can prove that some other childcare facility in the county has a lower ratio, lower than 5:1 ratio for particularly 1 to 3 year olds, then we can explain that how the author is calling the claim not accurate. Okay. I hope this is clear to all. So with this understanding, I think this understanding may not have been clear, that HSD says 1 to 3 year old 5:1 ratio lowest. The author does not agree with this. The author says this claim, that this is lowest, this is for that particular age group. Let's go to the options. Happy Smiles Daycare has 2 rooms, one for children 1 to 2 years old, another for 2 to 3 years old, both of which have a child care. This actually confirms HSD's claim. So this is actually going against. This is strengthening. This is a strengthener for the claim. All right. So this, it's proving that 5:1 is there. It is not saying that it is not the lowest. Okay. B says Kenton School. Kenton School. So here we have another school in the county which has fewer than 100 students. So this could be 99, 98, 80, 78, whatever. And a legitimate child to caregiver ratio of 6 is to 1. Legitimate means we have to believe that this is actually true. This is not a false claim made by Kenton School. Provides approximately equal size classes for each year up to age 6. Okay, so for ages 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they have equal size classes. That means in each class, they have 6 children and one caregiver. I mean, though the classes for those over 3 have a child caregiver ratio more than double that of other classes. So older children, the ratio is higher, which means the ratio for younger children will be lower, right? So I'm going to keep B on hold. I'm going to explain B separately to you. The number of students enrolled in HSD remains fixed, doesn't explain why their claim is false. Tiny Tots Daycare, okay, another daycare, which boasts 4 is to 1 child to caregiver ratio, includes any adults who are in the classroom. So this is actually wrong because remember, 5 is to 1 was not including any adult or sorry, not including the cleaning staff. So I cannot utilize D. Looming budget cuts indicate that Happy Smiles Daycare may not be able to sustain in future. That is also not our concern. So even if you're solving this by way of elimination, and even if you don't have the time to justify option B, B is the correct answer because you can actually rule out the others. Now, how is B the answer? I'll just quickly give you the math of it. Uh, for the sake of, you know, let's say calculation, because if I take 98, 99 students, lots of maths will be involved, not my strong area. So I'm going to say, let's say Kenton School has 100 children, and just for the sake of argument, let's say 50 children are below 3 and 50 children are above 3. So total ratio is 6 is to 1. That means if we divide 100 by 6, 100 children by 6, there should be approximately 17 caregivers for those 100 children. Actually, it comes to 16.66, but you can't have 16.66 caregivers. So I'm just rounding that figure off at 17. But for 4 to 6 year, it is more than double of 1 to 3. So whatever ratio 1 to 3 has, double of that is for the older children. So say there are 12 caregivers. So double of 6 for the younger children. Only 5 caregivers for the older children. Right? Thus, the ratio for the older children will be 50 divided by 5, which is 10 is to 1. And for the younger children, it will be 50 divided by 12, that is 4 is to 1. So 4 is to 1 is lower than the claim made by HSD, which is 5.1. And that is how B is the correct answer. I hope this is clear. That brings us to the last question. If you want more clarity, just take a screenshot of this and go through this later. All right. So let me quickly take you to the next question, which is the last question. A lot of you were not able to see the boldface on this question. So if you want, you can quickly solve this question. I'll give you 2 minutes to solve this question if you want. Do you want time to solve this question, guys? Let me know if you want time to solve this question. Do you want time to solve this question, guys? Do you want time to solve this question, guys, or should I just simply explain this? Right? I'm not able to get any response. Let me get ahead with explanation. I don't see. Okay, 2 minutes you have. I'm just going to mute myself and switch off the camera. 2 minutes, and you can post your answers. Go ahead. Those of you who finished solving this can start posting your answers. All right. So I have an answer D here. Any more answers, guys? Earlier, some of you had posted when you were solving the questions. Some of you had posted C and E as well. And I have one answer which says D right now. There are so many of you there. Any more answers forthcoming? Your time is up. So I'm going to start explaining here. Okay. First sentence. Some researchers propose that creativity is no longer correlated to intelligence above a specific IQ level. So up to a specific IQ level, there is correlation between creativity and intelligence, but beyond that, no. So this is a third party opinion. Some researchers are third party. Okay. They cited results of a study that show high to moderate correlation between intelligence and creativity in preschool children with IQ below 20 and no correlation in IQ above 1. So this is clearly a fact that the third party opinion is kind of the researchers are using. All right. However, the proposal of the researchers is not unquestionable. Not unquestionable literally means questionable. So, whose opinion is this? This is the author's opinion, and the author is going against the third party. All right. So, author is against. Some other studies found no significant correlations between intelligence and creativity, with the exception of a positive correlation relationship with the group within the group having an IQ above 140. So this is clearly a fact which the author is using to support his opinion, right? Using a different intelligence test, CAT, the correlations between CAT intelligence scores and creativity remained insignificant for groups with IQ below 140. So here also the author is using fact to support his own opinion. So if you look through this, the main conclusion is this statement in which the author is saying that the proposal of the researchers is questionable. And if we look at the first two statements, they are going in the opposite direction of the main conclusion. And the next two statements, the fourth and the fifth statements, are supporting the main conclusion. So the first boldface is a counter premise, the second boldface is a premise. All right. With that, let's move to our answer choice elimination. So the first boldface is a counter premise. It is supporting the third party conclusion. The second boldface is a premise because it is supporting the author's conclusion, and the author's conclusion is this. That's the main conclusion. Option. Uh, Let me see if I have more answers. Okay, I have another D. Okay, let's see. The first is an objection. Can we call it an objection? Well, the researchers are kind of going against. So, all right. That has been raised against a judgment presented by the argument. Yes. So, first is an objection. That objection has been raised against the main conclusion presented by the argument. So far, so good. Support for that objection. Second boldface is not supporting the first boldface. Okay, so A is not the answer. First is an objection. All right. That has been raised against a judgment. Yes. That the argument calls into question. No. The argument is actually making that judgment. Okay. So this is completely out. B is also out. First is the result. Well, it is results of a study. So let me call it its result is correct. Presented as support for the position that the argument calls into question. Yes, the first is presented as support for the third party opinion, and the argument is calling the third party opinion into question. So far all these parts are correct of C. Second is a result presented to weaken another result. Now second is a result. Yes, second is also a result presented to weaken another result. Is it weakening another result that opposes that position? No, the second one is a premise. It is not presented to weaken anything else. It is presented to support the main conclusion. So C is out. First is a result presented to support the position that the argument calls into question. No, it is, sorry, this is correct. One second. My bad, guys. Let me just clear this. So first is the result. Yes, we can call it, it is definitely the result. And this result is presented to support the position. So it is supporting the third party opinion, and the argument is calling that into question. Absolutely. The second is a result presented to support another result that opposes that position. Now, this is the part where it gets wrong. Sorry, this is the part which is we need to. So, second is a result. First of all, is it a result or not? There's a problem with my pen here. Sorry. Second is a result. Yes, presented to support another result. This is supporting this line here. Okay, is supporting this result. All right, because this is the result of other studies. So this is all presenting that opposes that position. So that position is referring to the third party position, this position. Yes, the second boldface is definitely opposing both these two statements. Both the statements are opposing the third party opinion. So D is correct. First is the result presented to weaken the position that the argument calls into question. No, it's supporting that position, not weakening that position. So E is also out. That brings us to the end of this session, guys. I hope you really like the explanations, and I'm quickly going to share two links using which you can take a look at the free trial version of GMAT Wiz course if you are so interested. And if you are facing issues or problems in your prep, you can also get in touch with our strategy experts by booking call using the calendly.com link. So there are two links. There's a link to the free trial version of the course, and there's a link to the calendly.com link. I'll just post that separately. I do hope you found this methodology that we discussed today. Kanav, you can watch the recording of question number 8. All right, this recording will be available to you. You can see this on YouTube. You can watch it on question number 8. You can watch the recording. All right. Let me see if I can take you back to question number 8. Hold on a second. Okay, here's question number 8. Kanav, this is especially for you. All right. So you can take a screenshot of this explanation here, and I'll also show the next one, the next slide. So the correct answer on question number 8 was B. Kanav, you're welcome. Guys, thank you so much for being such an attentive audience, and I really hope that the methods and explanations that we used today were clear for you. See you around, take care, and happy learning. All the best for your prep. Thank you, guys.